I don't recommend going the normal route of that, where it's like the CPM model, unless you're getting tens of thousands of downloads. The way I did it was I actually just reached out to companies directly that I thought made sense for my audience.
Most hosts never achieve the results they hoped for. They're falling short on listenership and monetization, meaning their message isn't being heard and their show ends up costing them money. This podcast was created to help you grow your listenership and make money while you're at it. Get ready to take notes. Here's your host, Adam Adams.
What's up, podcaster? It's your host, Adam A. Adams, and I'm stoked because we've got somebody on the podcast who's got well over 100 episodes. I think when I looked, it was like 167 episodes, so she's been really pushing hard, and I know that you're probably listening and thinking, man, I want to get some more episodes out. I only have 2. I only have 40. And she's got over 100. So we're going to learn a couple of things from her. We're going to talk a little bit about how she monetizes her podcast. And we're going to talk about some marketing. How does she grow her podcast as well? She has a company that supports podcasters that started in around 2022. And we will also find out a little bit about some of the things that she's learned along the way, basically because she serves a lot of people like you. And so let's get started with Sarah St. John from the Preneur. Is that what it's called? The Preneur?
Yep, Preneur. And then I have a tagline, building a business on a bootstrap budget.
Well, let's talk about, man, there's so many places that we can go. I want to start with, let's just talk about your company, the newest company, because I know you did drop shipping and things like that before launching this that you're doing this year, helping podcasters. And let's just talk about like, how did you bootstrap it? And then we'll get more into like podcasting. But I think our listener today is probably thinking, not every one of them, a lot of the listeners might be multimillionaires, who knows, but some of them need to bootstrap. So let's talk about like, what did you do? What do you suggest? What have you learned on your podcast? Let's just say the top 3 takeaways, perhaps, about bootstrapping a business before we jump into podcasting.
Oh, sure. So one thing is when someone's starting a business, they think that they need to go all in and spend the most money. Like, say, for example, they're starting a podcast. Let's just use that as an example. They'll think that they need to spend, $5,000, $10,000 on the best podcast equipment that you would see in maybe a radio station. But I recommend, just starting, like I started mine with $100, which was the microphone I use is an ATR 2100. There's a Samsung QTU. These mics are like $60, USB mics. And then, just having, I recommend headphones, which most people have, and a computer, most people have. So really you can get started very affordably. You don't need, anyway, so basically start with what you need, not what you want, I guess. Maybe that's a good way to say it. Start with the basics. And then also avoiding shiny object syndrome. I know I struggled with that and still do.
I was going to call you out on that too.
Yeah. Oh,
we should talk more about that. Okay. So what is a shiny object? What's a shiny object syndrome? And how do most entrepreneurs fall prey to it?
Yeah. So that's just getting distracted with any new business idea, for example, any new type of software you could use. Some people get shiny object syndrome with equipment, new mics. For me, I tried anything and everything with business. I tried, you'd mentioned drop shipping, also affiliate marketing, blogging, a whole bunch of different things. I actually had a photography business as well, a travel agency. So I tried a bunch of different things. And it wasn't until I came across podcasting that I've basically found my niche, I guess you could say, and stuck with it for the past 3 years. But I just kept anything I would hear about, like, oh, what's this drop shipping thing? I should try that. What's this other thing? I should try that. But even once you're in the niche that you're in, like for me, podcasting, sometimes I'll think, oh, I could start a podcast on this. I could start one on this, or I could do this, that, and the other thing. But then that's just diluting my time and attention to a million different things when I need to just focus on my one podcast and my one business, that kind of thing.
Have you ever read that book? It's called The One Thing by Gary Keller.
Oh, yes, I have.
Okay. I think he wrote something for real estate agents and one for real estate investors. Also, I think they're called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent or something like that. I don't recall, but I do recall that those other books were written first and the one thing was written after. And they were talking about something similar, I think, to what you're saying about getting distracted by different shiny objects. And I will be totally honest with the listener because the listener needs to hear this. I think Sarah can relate as well. But I started back in 2015 is when I decided to go full-time in real estate investing. And so prior to that, I had always had a job that made money. And then I put as much money, my money or other people's money, I did creative deals too, to purchase real estate so that I can make like a little bit of passive cash flow. And it was in 2015, at the end of 2015, I recall, like in late summer, that I decided this is it. I'm only going to do real estate. I'm not going to do anything else. So at first, I tried wholesaling. That's a term for like wrapping up a house and then trying to get rid of the contract without ever owning it. So I tried wholesaling. I tried fix and flipping. We did a few fix and flips. I tried tax deed investing. So I would analyze deals in different counties and then I would go to the auctions on virtually and purchase properties. And I tried once. I lost money on technically I made $1,000, but I bought it for $100K and I sold it for $110K. And I think I made like almost broken even. What was it? Mobile home parks. And I will keep a single mobile home. And so I had tried those and self-storage and assisted living, and I could just keep going on. Small multifamily, large multifamily, multifamily syndication. The point is, if you're stressed, I heard that this thing was a good thing, and so I tried it. I heard that thing was a good thing, just like Sarah with you and your drop shipping and a couple of other things that you've tried along the way. I was all in real estate, but it was so many different niches, and I couldn't focus. So going back to Gary Keller, he wrote a book, was his first thing that he did for agents to support real estate agents. And Keller Williams became a huge company. And he attributes a lot of that success from what he called focus, paying attention to one thing. For me, I didn't start getting any success in real estate until I went all out and for a long period of time on one thing. When I was dabbling in a lot of different things, I was generally losing money or barely being able to eat, right? And so for our listener who's hearing all of the different types of businesses that they could start, all the different types of unique ways you can get cash flow or invest in real estate, Sarah, what do you think? They should just stay on one thing or try it all?
I mean, if in general, I would say stick with one thing. One benefit for me, because I tried it all, I wrote a book about it called Preneur, which goes over like the different types of online business models and how to run them affordably, which then I decided to launch the podcast Preneur to coincide with the book. And so in a way, for me, I ended up kind of turning it into a good thing. But for most people, I would definitely recommend, and now I just have one lane, but I definitely recommend choosing a lane and sticking with it. Of course, the problem is people don't know which lane to pick. And so sometimes you almost have to try a few different things until you find that thing. But yeah, once you find something that is successful, that you're enjoying, and you're monetizing it, I say don't fix it if it ain't broke. Like, don't try a bunch of different things once you find something that's working.
Okay. And that was the second piece of advice. The first one was that you only need to purchase what you need, not what you want. You only have to purchase the basics, a mic that'll work, that's $69, Samsung Q2U that you mentioned. The second piece of advice was basically focus. Don't chase a whole bunch of shiny objects. I think that there's something like a man who goes after two birds gets none, or I don't know if I'm saying it right, but basically, you're chasing two rabbits. That's what it is. If you're chasing two different rabbits, you won't get any rabbit. You really have to focus on that one rabbit because they're fast critters and there's a lot going on there, just like there is with any business or any podcast that you're launching. So we should focus on one. Going back to Gary Keller, he launched this book. What was it called? I think it was The Millionaire Real Estate Agent or something. And the one thing he talks about how he had all of these options that could be good. And it's hard because you're choosing between good and good. You're choosing between something that makes money and something else that makes money. And most people are like, well, if I just do them all, I'll make more money. And Gary and his team sat together, I think like a powwow or something. And then he was like, what's the one thing, everybody write this down if you don't already know, what's the one thing that we can do today that if we do it, will move our business forward by tomorrow, right? And so for him, it was, I'm going to write this book. For us, you listening, you got to focus on one thing, whatever that is. And I promise if you try to start all of these different businesses or dabble, I was going to say babble. If you dabble in a bunch of different businesses, like you're kind of trying, you're kind of giving it half-ass effort, it's not going to work. You need to give full-ass effort. That's the only way to make it work. Sarah, what's the third piece of advice that you would have that comes from being a frugal entrepreneur?
Yeah. So, and this could be across the board, whether you're a frugalpreneur or not. And that is whatever you're spending time learning, actually implement it. I know one trap I fell into was learning through podcasts, courses, books, whatever. And that is important. But I was learning a million different things and then learning the next thing and the next thing and next thing before even implementing them. So even before I had an opportunity to implement one thing, I'm learning the next thing. And then by the time I want to implement that thing, I forgot how to do it in the first place. And so you could spend so much time like learning, but if you're not implementing it, it's a waste of time.
Yeah. 2018 is the year that I read The One Thing. 2018, many years ago now. And that same year, I don't want to exaggerate, I think I read like 40 books, which is pretty good. And I mean, there's other people that can read faster. That's fine. I'm not trying to one-up you. But I read a shit ton of books that year. And as I was learning, I was at my mastermind group. It's a group that you pay like $22,000 every year to just be with other people that are kind of crushing it in their businesses so you can kind of learn from them and you can pour into them. And I was there and I was just bragging about how I had read some amount of books. I think it was like 40 in the last year. And somebody's like, what books did you read? And I said, I don't know. Let me pull up my app to like see all these. And I started listing and he's like, what did you learn from that? What did you learn from that? And I tried to tell him, and he's like, what did you implement from that? That's the big word that you're saying, Sarah. Implementation. He's like, what did you implement from that? And I'm like, well, nothing. He's like, then why the hell are you reading another book right now? Why are you taking in more content if you haven't done anything with the content that you've already brought into your brain? It's now all of that knowledge is useless if you're not going to do anything with it. And I had to think about that. And from that day on, I started reading a little bit slower. I started trying to read a book, or I listened because I'm dyslexic. I would listen to a book. And then at the end, I would try to think of what's one or two things out of this book that I can implement over the next few weeks before I go and read another book. So I'm really glad you brought that up for the third thing for the frugal entrepreneur, because we can just keep paying for education, paying for books, and do nothing with it. And I think that's a way that we avoid doing what we need to do. And we think that because we're reading or because we're learning or because we're taking an education program, that we're moving forward, but we're not moving forward unless we're actually moving forward. So that's really, really interesting. So let's talk about your podcast. I think it was 67 episodes. I don't want to undercut you or anything, but you had pretty close to 200 episodes coming out. And I want to know, like, what are the top 3 things that you've learned or gained about software, about how to do things, about getting guests, about something because of having your podcast for so long that the listener can learn from you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I use a few different types of software for different things. Like I use Podmatch for finding guests or being a guest on other shows, which, by the way, I recommend if you are a podcast host to also guest on other shows, because obviously the other shows you're on, they're podcast listeners, so they're more likely to switch over and listen to your show as well. So that's just kind of a side note. And then as far as like recording my podcasts with guests, I use Squadcast, but you can use Zoom. There's a Riverside. There's a few different platforms. But I guess what I've learned is, well, and especially recently, I started thinking, I think it's easy to start a podcast with a particular topic in mind or niche, an avatar and all this stuff. But then I think it's easy to kind of get distracted and trail off. And you might still be within that general category, but you're interviewing people that it might not, because like I'll start interviewing entrepreneurs that I just admire and look up to, but maybe it's not a frugal topic necessarily. So I started thinking I've just had to switch gears a few times and kind of like really nail down, like basically for starting in 2023, my goal is I'm going to probably release more episodes instead of weekly, but I'll have like one interview a week and it'll be a shorter episode. Like usually my interviews are 45 minutes to an hour, but I'm finding people kind of like more the 30-minute range. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to start trying that out. And then having a solo episode once a week as well, where I talk about a particular software or service that is beneficial to a frugal entrepreneur, that whether it's a free service or an affordable one, different software programs that I use basically. And so, I'm also going to be doing with the interviews, my focus is going to be more on people who have bootstrapped their business, like started with under $1,000 and bootstrapped it up to 7 figures and beyond. And I did do a few episodes specifically like that in the past. And those downloads were 2, 3, 4 times as many as some of the others. So I'm like, okay, that's really what I need to focus on. So I think just kind of as time goes on, just really nailing down your focus and your audience and what they want, really paying attention to your download numbers. Like, why did this episode have 5 times as many downloads as this one? You know, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good. I'm writing some notes here. Pay attention to your audience. And I'm going to mention to our listener real quick that I'm going to go ahead and record a solo episode. If you're listening and you've been listening for a while, you know that I record every other episode that is published on the podcast is an interview, and the opposite is a solo. And Sarah brought up some good stuff, like paying attention to your audience and going through even her journey with her podcast, how she is kind of like switched gears and decided to get this kind of guest and ask these kind of questions. And then it's kind of been like an organic flow to get to where she is now. So I'm going to record an episode that'll be, 15 minutes or so. That'll come out right after this episode. And it'll just talk about the 3 things that I think will help people if you're just launching a podcast. The 3 things that you need in order to really have your niche and know your avatar and not switch and go back and forth, but to get intentional in the beginning. So I'll just make sure that that's the very next episode after this. I'm going to make a note to record that and we'll go ahead and get it published. Good stuff. What else, Sarah? What else have you learned along the way besides paying attention to your audience? What other things does our listener, who's a podcaster, a brand new, less than 2 years, need to know about launching their podcast?
Yeah. So another thing I've kind of learned recently is just creative ways to get bigger names on my show. And I don't think you need to have big name people on your show other than for the fact that it kind of increases your credibility and authority. That's kind of mainly why I have done it. And of course, the fact that they can offer value to my audience. But some of the ways that I have done that, and it's all been kind of on accident, just trial and error. We were talking before we started recording about how I got Pat Flynn on the show. And the way I did that was, well, I had tried getting him on my show for, a handful of times through his contact form, which is really the only way to contact him, and didn't hear anything. I imagine because that goes through gatekeepers and all this stuff. Well, then he launched this private community called Smart Passive or SPI Pro, Smart Passive Income. It was like $49 a month. I joined it necessarily for the purpose of what ended up happening, but just because I wanted to join it. But then I noticed the platform he uses is Circle. You can direct message people on there. So I figured, might as well see if I can direct message Pat Flynn. And so I direct messaged him, asked him, I told him about the podcast and that I'd love to have him on the show, just very brief. I included a booking link. And within 2 hours, he booked and replied saying, yeah, I'd love to be on your show. I booked in. And so I think the lesson I learned there was if there's a certain person you're wanting on your show, go where they spend time. Whether that's, let's say it's just a private Facebook group that's free, but if they have a paid membership or something like that, just go where they spend time, show that you're a customer of theirs in some way, shape, or form, whether that's having purchased their books or their course. So that's one thing I've learned. Another one was Mike Michalowicz. He's the author of Profit First, among many other books. And I tried to get him on my show, heard nothing. Well, this one's kind of a two-parter. One, I had been a guest on someone else's show who happened to be an acquaintance of him. And when I was like confirming the interview and everything with this show I was going to be on, I had this link for my Dream 100, of which Mike Michalowicz was on. And so when we wrapped up our interview, the guy whose show I was on was like, hey, I saw your Dream 100 list and that Mike Michalowicz is on there and I actually know him. Do you want me to give you an introduction? I said, yeah, that'd be awesome. So he did the introduction and everything. And in addition to the fact, I think this is the two-parter, is that Mike Michalowicz was coming out with a new book called Get Different around that time. And so I heard back and he booked on the show. And I think kind of at play there is the fact that it was kind of networking and having an introduction from someone he already knew, plus the fact he was coming out with a book. And I think that's kind of another lesson is that if there's someone you're wanting to get on who's usually difficult to get on, pay attention to what they have coming out, whether it's a book, a course, whatever, because they're much more likely to go on your show when they're trying to promote something that's coming out than maybe they would otherwise. And so those are some things I've learned as well.
Awesome. This is really good stuff. So you got Pat Flynn, you got Mike Michalowicz, you got some other people, JLD on your podcast, and a couple of takeaways so far is that if there's a certain person you want to go on your show, to go where they spend time, maybe paying for even their coaching program or whatever, to be in their circle. And the other one with Mike Michalowicz came because you basically said you got to pay attention to what they have coming out. So if they've got a course, I think you mentioned, I know you mentioned book because Mike Michalowicz had his other book coming out when you had that connection. And I think there's a third takeaway that I'm hearing, and it's this, that you got to kind of put stuff out there. Now, you got lucky because in this one instance, that guy asked you to tell him their Dream 100 and you put some of them on and he happened to know one. But the point I think that the listener needs to take is they got to keep their feelers out. They got to keep feeling and they got to keep mentioning what they want. And I think in a way, okay, let me take that back. I'm pretty dang confident that in a way, the God or the universe will provide for you if you're really putting it out there. Like The Secret. Do you believe in The Secret, Sarah?
I've heard of that. Is the book The Secret?
Yeah. Have you heard of it?
I've heard of it. I haven't read it. So I guess refresh my memory.
The main point, this is one of the 40 books that I read in a year, and I don't remember them all perfectly, obviously. But The Secret basically talks about how if you put your intention into something, if you put your focus, if you put your energy into something, it'll generally happen. So a lot of people, they're like shy and timid to jump on a box jump or to go rock climbing somewhere because they're thinking, and this is kind of in that book, they're thinking, I don't want to fall. I really don't want to fall. Falling would be bad. If I fell right there, that would hurt. And then what ends up happening because they're thinking about falling the whole time, then they fall. And instead, we're supposed to be thinking about succeeding. If they're like, I can succeed, I can do this, I can overcome this. If that's our mental attitude, our approach to something, then we're more likely to actually succeed. And it just kind of happens because one way we're thinking about the negative, even if it's I don't want this bad thing versus I want this positive thing, and then we go and get it. And for you, you know that you wanted Mike Michalowicz on your podcast. You knew that you wanted to connect with him. You knew that he impressed you. And as you went through, you ended up putting it out there and it worked. And I don't want to be too foo-foo for the listener. I'm not trying to get the listener to roll their eyes and be like, this isn't my kind of podcast. I will just want to say that I've noticed that in my life, I try my hardest to follow the secret. And I believe that if you put your intentions in that place long enough, persistence, determined, and letting it out there, even if it's embarrassing, I believe that it ends up happening for most of us in most cases. So anyway, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I need to add that book to my reading list then. Because I believe that too. I guess it's kind of like the whole manifestation. Is that
and the secret is the law of attraction. Really. Have you heard that before? Yeah, the law of attraction, whatever we're thinking about, we're focused on, whether it's good or bad, or whether we're saying we want it or don't want it, oftentimes it comes into our life. So when people are like, I don't want to lose money, I don't want to make a bad investment, sometimes that's what they get instead of like, I want to make a good investment. It's just a different way of thinking about it. So
yeah, it's interesting how that works, because I've seen that a few times recently in life where, like, tell yourself, okay, this is going to happen. I don't know when or how, but it's going to happen. I'm going to make it happen. It seems to happen at some point.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, let me think. What should we talk about? We've got so many things. How about this? I think I promised our listener that we were going to talk a little bit about you monetizing and about you advertising. So let's do a quick break. And as soon as we're back from the break, we're going to figure out how does Sarah monetize her podcast? In what ways has she done it? And is she teaching her clients to do it? And secondly, advertise. How do you advertise? What outlets are you going to grow your podcast and or clients' podcasts? We'll be right back.
Hey, my friend, as you know, this episode is sponsored by my company, growyourshow.com. We want you to be able to have the best tools at your disposal without costing you a whole arm and a leg. So right now you can get a free list of vetted equipment that like mics, mixers, webcams, sound treatment, editing software, everything that you need. I created the whole PDF with direct purchase links just to save you time and money, to help it be more convenient for you. So this free PDF will help you skip all the guesswork. If it's on there, it's vetted and approved by yours truly. And if it's not on there, it's probably not worth the money. So go ahead and get yours at growyourshow.com/PDF. Let's get back into the show.
We're back with Sarah St. John. It's like Adam Adams. I like those names where it just sounds cool, and nobody wants to just say Sarah.
Right, you know? Exactly.
They got to say the whole thing because it just sounds good together.
Yeah, so, I love the alliteration of it.
Yeah. Alliteration. Thank you for teaching me a big word today. I really appreciate that. So let's dive in. We promised the listener that after our break, we were going to go in with you and talk just about those two things. How do you monetize? How do you advertise? So let's start with monetization. Give us the goods. How much have you made? How have you made it? Where have you made it? In what way did you think to make it? Give us those goods, and then we'll talk about advertising.
Sure. So there's a bunch of different ways to monetize a podcast. The way that I'm trying to do it right now is through products and services, through my books. I recently released a course.
How many books do you have?
4.
Holy cow, Sarah. That wasn't in your bio?
Oh, maybe I need to update my bio then.
4 books?
Yeah.
All right. Give us a quick about these books, and then we'll keep talking about monetizing real quick.
Okay. So the first book was Preneur, and that's where the podcast came from as well. And that was about like the different types of online business models and how to run them affordably. The second book was Preneur, which is about self-publishing, because I had self-published and still do all my books. The third book was Preneur. So it was basically a Preneur trilogy, which wasn't my goal or intent. It just kind of how it worked out. And then that's about like podcasting basics, how to start a podcast, stuff like that. And then my most recent book that came out in August is 27 Ways to Market and Monetize a Podcast. And that's kind of more I wouldn't say beginner. That's more like intermediate, like someone who already has a podcast and they're looking how to market and monetize it. So yeah, those are the 4 books. And usually I give those away for free, at least the ebook version, as my lead magnet, basically, and to grow my email list. And then the podcast production agency is kind of my main focus now as far as monetizing it on the product and service side. You can also monetize through sponsorships. I don't recommend going the normal route of that, where it's like the CPM model, unless you're getting, tens of thousands of downloads. The way I did it was I actually just reached out to companies directly that I thought made sense for my audience, because I didn't want like mattress commercials ads on my
and reach out directly. This is brilliant stuff. I mean, I'm genuine. Reach out directly. This is so good. I'm going to definitely get back to that. So you mentioned you didn't want mattress companies, and I just have to side note. I'm so sorry. I have to side note on this because I had a client. His name's Chris. Great guy. He had a podcast for like over 4 years. And then he hired us to do consultation, editing, and post-production and marketing. And as we were doing these things, I kept asking him to turn off these dynamic ads. Mm-hmm. It's like some type of dynamic ad insertion. I'm like, turn these off, because there's like 3 commercials. It takes like 2.5 minutes. There's like 3 different commercials, a minute, and a 30. No, maybe it's it's either 2 or 2.5 minutes. I don't want to get hung up on that. Point is, it's a long time to just sit there. And the worst part about it was that they were like mattress commercials and Home Depot commercials and lingerie commercials. And then one was like in some other language. I'm pretty sure Spanish. I speak a little Spanish, but I didn't understand like anything on this. But the point being that his listener speaks English. I clearly know that. And his listener, so he's like a financial person. He's the anti-financial advisor. And the point where I wanted to go with this is that we did marketing for him. And it was, he was getting downloads, but he wasn't getting listeners. He was getting people to come and listen once, but not to stay forever. And my thought was, Chris, you're letting your people down. Before they ever hear value, before you ever teach them a single thing, they've gotten all these commercials. And by the way, they don't even understand one of the commercials. So the first commercial comes in Spanish and your listener is an English speaker. Maybe they're bilingual, a couple of them, but most of the people that listen to a podcast in a certain language, a majority of them only know that language, or probably aren't going to know this other random language that you have. So I'm just like, we're putting so much time and effort and money into your podcast, bro. And it's not working because I keep asking you to turn these effing ads off, because like I'm bringing people to you. And after 2.5 minutes of sitting through Spanish, like a language that they don't understand, and like lingerie ad next to a Home Depot ad, next to a Davenport ad, it's like, what is happening here? Like none of those help his person. So I love that you're talking about don't do the CPM, do direct outreach. So I want to hear, like, did you outreach to somebody? Were you able to get them on your podcast? And how did that happen?
Yeah. So basically I reached out to companies either that I already use their products and services, their software usually, or knew that it would make sense for my audience, and got a few different ones. The biggest one that I got was Webinar Ninja. That was like a 10 episode spot. And it was basically Webinar Ninja. It's basically a platform to help you run webinars. And they were launching like a free plan option. And so they wanted, when I reached out to them, he was like, oh yeah, this is perfect. Can we try it in such and such month? Because that's when we're launching our free plan, which makes sense for Preneur, free, whatever. And so, but yeah, I don't know, there's probably 5 or 10 different companies I could think of that. But yeah, I think the direct, first of all, you're likely to get paid higher when you do a direct versus the CPM, because that's kind of like, it is what it is. Usually what I think $25 per 1,000 downloads or something with a CPM. Yeah. Plus, like you said, you don't really always have control over what kind of ads appear. Whereas so basically, if you approach people directly, not only are you controlling who your sponsors are, but also controlling the rate as well. And so, yeah, that's what I recommend as far as sponsorships go. And
so real quick, you could either get CPM, and to really make sure that the listener heard, you're saying it's $25 per 1,000 downloads is a pretty normal amount if you go for cost per mil, CPM. And this is what a lot of other people are thinking about is cost per impression, cost per download, cost per, whatever. And if you go that route, then they're going to say, all right, every 1,000 downloads will give you $25, which sounds good if you have tens of thousands, because then you're making like $500-$600 per episode, and it makes recording an episode pretty worth it. But you're saying instead reach out to these other people, and you reached out to that one that I don't remember their name, but Webinar Ninja? Is that what it was? Okay. So you reached out to Webinar Ninja and they're like, oh, this is going to be perfect. So how much did they pay you? Was it 25 CPM?
So it was just a flat $50 per episode.
Okay. And then how many downloads were you getting at the time?
At that time, I would say per episode, no more than 500.
Okay. So 50 for 500 is basically 100 CPM. So you 4x'd your income by, and maybe more, because you said no more than 500. So maybe it was 100. You never know. So you at least 4x'd your income by reaching out to them directly instead of having them kind of reach out to you. And I think that that's something that the listeners got to hear and be able to chew on for a sec. If you take the time, you can quadruple your income. That's what Sarah St. John did by reaching out to this ninja company. And sure, it was only $50 an episode. It's not going to change your life, but it will help support you, especially, let's just say, for example, let's say you're spending $175 to do every episode, and now you're saving that $50 on each episode just because you have the sponsor, because you reached out. And I think you could do even better too. There's even possibilities that you could do better. We've had some clients that, Sarah, it's cool because I teach the same thing that you just did. I have my clients reach out to people, and Julie Holly, I think she got 2,000 or maybe it was 2,500. I don't want to say it wrong, but people can listen to that episode. And I coached her to reach out to those other people and try to be the one who's connecting with them. And she got something like over $2,000 or more. And I think her downloads at the time were 300 downloads per episode. And so let's just say she's doing four episodes. So that's it's more than 500 per episode. And she only had 300 downloads. And so that's another 4x. And all it comes is you're reaching out to them. And that's a big takeaway here. Sarah, that was, I love that you brought that up. We are going to be switching gears here in a second. So I want you to maybe, if there's any other monetization thing that you got to tell us, and then tell us how you advertise.
Yeah. So I think those are the two main ways to monetize, whether it's offering your own products and services or sponsorship, but doing it that way, sponsorship that way versus the CPM model. Unless, of course, you have, tens of thousands of downloads. And if there's a way you can do it without having random ads.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Those are random ad insertion is just, and they don't even put them in good places either. That's the problem is they'll say, oh, let's put this in the middle. And so it's a 38-minute and 12-second thing. And so they go and try to find the 19-minute and 6 seconds, and they just put an ad because it's the middle. Or they say, oh, always put it at the 10-minute mark. And so then you might be in the middle of a conversation, like you and I are in a conversation, and before I can even finish this, it's some random ad. And so, yeah, I don't like the ad insertion at all. That's just me. And I don't think you said yourself, Sarah, you make a lot more money if you do it this way. And it's more relevant. I think those are the two big takeaways: more money and more relevance to the audience, more helpful to the audience. So
exactly. And then as far as advertising goes, there's a few different ways you can do it. You could run Facebook ads. I don't necessarily recommend that. But what I recommend is podcast player ads or podcast directories. And several different ones offer the option to have an ad. Like I think Spotify offers it, Overcast. The one, as a frugalpreneur, I try to keep everything below, like anything I do, like under $100. And so I ran an ad that was $99 for 7 days. And I think it was Castro or Castos. I don't know, one of those C ones. And it even tells you like what you can predict or estimate that your impressions will be and what your basically that's how many people it shows it to. But
can I clarify something? This is you're putting an advertisement about your podcast on other people's podcasts. Is that what's happening?
Well, yeah, that's actually different. I'm talking about like the display ads where like someone's listening to a podcast on a particular app and it'll recommend your podcast to that person. And then the thing that's nice about that is there's really no barrier of entry because they're already in the podcast app. They can just click on your ad.
How much does it cost to do that?
So the one that I've done so far was $99 for 7 days. And
is it like only if they listen to a certain podcast, then yours is offered? Or how does that work?
Well, I think it's a certain genre.
Okay, so within the genre. So if you're in business and entrepreneurship or education or parenting or whatever, then you would basically select this genre or subgenre and say, these are the types of podcasts that I want to be in front of. And so then the listener on those platforms, Spotify or whatever, is listening to their very favorite podcast, but then your face, your logo, your podcast artwork shows up as you might like this too.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
And basically they tell you what you can expect to get from this, but it actually, the ad performed better than even expected. And I have that broken down actually in my most recent book, like screenshots of what you can expect, what I actually got. And so I'll probably run an ad like that again. I haven't run like the $2,000 ads in, what is it, Overcast? There's Overcast. I don't know. Some of them are really expensive and I haven't done those. Or like kind of what you alluded to was where you could either have like a trailer or an intro or kind of a summary of your show inserted into other shows. And
I've heard of that.
Yeah, that Buzzsprout.
It can be expensive though. It can be expensive. Yeah, Buzzsprout does it and it's not expensive. But I think if you do like, it's either Spotify or I think it's Spotify. To do Spotify ads that way, when I called them, I don't remember, I might be exaggerating and I hate doing that. Like that's not where, I just think that they told me that there's got to be like a minimum budget of like $20,000 a month or something to do through them. But Buzzsprout, it's not like that. You basically say however much, and then they reach out to all the show hosts, and then some of the show hosts approve it or don't approve of it. I think on Buzzsprout. So I'm going to learn more about these other type of Spotify ads that you are talking about and probably add to our services ? And so I'll look that up after you and I get off this call, because that was a really cool thing when you can basically put your podcast up in front of people that are listening to other podcasts in your genre that basically says you might like this. Because if you were able to spend like $99 for 7 days or whatever, I think we could probably add for our top clients something where it's $100 a month or it's $400 a month, $100 a week or whatever. Was there a minimum on it?
No.
Okay. There's not a minimum. So if I wanted to do like $50 in a whole month on those Spotify ads, I could.
Well, I see what you're saying. Well, Spotify, I think is $250. I haven't done Spotify yet.
Which one did you do for $99? Which one was that?
That one was, is it Castro? Hold on, let me look here.
And that's a playing platform, a platform to listen to podcasts?
Yeah.
Okay. Castro.
It's either Castro or Castos. Let's see. Let me look it up real quick.
It's probably Castro Oil, I think. Don't you?
Or Fidel Castro. No, just kidding. Let's see. It is, Castro.
All right. I'm going to definitely look it up. Sarah, we've gone a little bit over time, and I want to ask you, can you still tell us more of these advertising things? Like, is there anything else that you have tried and has worked or comes from your book, The 27 Ways to Do This?
Yeah. So I'm going to do Buzzsprout ads because that's pretty affordable. Audrey.io. It's kind of similar to Buzzsprout where you can have like your own little thing inserted into someone else's podcast. And basically people set their own rates there. I've done one ad that way. I think it was like $20. So there's a few different platforms you can use for that, or the different podcast player apps. There's several different ones. Most of them are out of my price range. The Castro one, it's $99 for 7 days, $199 for 15 days, and $399 for 30 days. But I just did the 7 day. And it says, since I have it pulled up, I might as well tell you. It says, for example, for the $99 7-day promo, you can expect to get 15,000 to 20,000 impressions, like people seeing it, 66 to 115 taps, and 15 to 50 subscriptions. But I got 25,573 impressions, 104.
Hey, how about, can you do it for me this way? Because I'm so dyslexic and ADD and I'm chasing squirrels all the time. Could you say, they said this thing, but I got this thing, and then go to the next one and say, they said this, but I got this?
Okay,
because
sure.
I'm like, I heard all of the first info, and now I can't remember it when you're telling me the second info.
That makes sense. Okay. So they said 15 to 20,000 impressions. I got 25,000. So 5,000 more than they said. They said 66 to 115 taps. I got 104 taps. So
right in the middle. On the high end.
On the high end. And then 15 to 50 subscriptions, and I got 29. So
right in the middle.
I guess right in the middle. Yeah.
Cool. And that was with something.io?
No, that was Castro.
That was Castro.
Is that Castro.com?
And was that your $20 or was that your $99 for that?
That was $99.
That's pretty cool. And so for $99, you got 29 subscribers, was it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
$99. So for every $3-ish, you get a subscriber. I'm trying to do some math here. To do some math here. So if I spend 3,000, then I might get 1,000 subscribers.
Mm-hmm.
It's worth it to me. I'm going to try it. I'm glad you brought that up. That's cool. All right. I'll go ahead, Sarah. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I thought it was Castro.f. Yeah, it's Castro.fm. Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Cool. Well, my team will probably be listening to this and they'll probably find like maybe a link to the Spotify, a link to the Castro, a link to the Buzzsprout, a link to that IO thing that you mentioned. What was it called again?
Audrey.io. That was the
Audrey.
$20.
How do you spell Audrey? Is it AUDRY?
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay. Cool. So we'll probably try to put those links in the show notes in case our listener wants to. And I'm going to do something sneaky. I'm going to try to make those affiliate links in case we can monetize our show by you just clicking on those links. As long as it's a win-win, we'll do it. If it takes money out of your pocket, I'm not interested. But if it helps you, we will always do that. And I'm only saying that because you're listening and I want you to be okay to monetize your podcast too. I want you to be okay to do affiliate links. We haven't talked about it yet with Sarah today, but I love affiliate stuff. All of the microphones, the equipment that you mentioned, Sarah, I'm going to do another plug now. She said the Samsung Q2U, $69. It's on our PDF of all of the equipment that you could use. She said what was the other one? ATR 2100X.
Mm-hmm.
So these are both XLR/USB, so they can grow with you. You can start at USB and then you can get XLR later whenever you want to keep bootstrapping to that next level. They're just growable microphones. I'm making that up. Nobody can use that. I'll probably coin it. They're growable microphones. Point is, growyourshow.com/PDF to go and grab that PDF for you. And those two mics that she mentioned are there. All of the other equipment that I use and suggest is there. You can see which ones. And they are affiliate links. So I might make a couple dollars if you buy them that direction. It'll help support the podcast. And you should too. Sarah, what do you want to share with the listener that we haven't said? Or if you're really compelled to repeat something, I think that'll be good. But where should we end the episode for our listener to be a better podcaster?
Well, I did want to touch on, affiliate marketing. Definitely recommend that as well. If there's a particular product or service that you're talking about in a podcast episode, include the affiliate link in your show notes, but of course have a disclaimer that it's an affiliate link. So that's another way to monetize.
So I like that you say that. I think it's interesting. I have to say it. I don't know why. I don't know if it's a legality. My attorney has never said, make sure they know that. Actually, my attorney doesn't sound that way. If he's listening, which he's not, I don't want him to be offended. That's not his voice. I was just, I'm sorry. He's going to be so mad. But let's just say my attorney's never told me you're not allowed to say that it's not an affiliate link. It's never come up. But I just feel like being transparent is the best way to have a business, to have a podcast. I don't like the sneaky feeling of you should use this microphone and then they get paid on it. Because if that's all it is, for my company, we think of it backwards. We're like, what are the best things that we can offer to people? What are the best priced, best working stuff? And we'll put it all together. And then we'll try to get affiliate links for as many of those things as possible so that we could monetize a podcast. But I have to tell my listener. I don't know why. I don't want them to think that I'm not monetizing, but I also want to pour into them, because they're podcasters too, that they should feel comfortable to monetize and let people know. And so I just want to know your thought. You're like, make sure you have that disclaimer. I want to know where that's coming from. If it's a legality that my attorney never told me about, or if you just feel that this transparent thing the way that I do, where does it come from?
Yeah, I mean, I've just heard that it's a legal issue that you're supposed to.
Oh, okay.
And really, I don't know why anyone would care. But as long as it's not costing them more money to buy through your link, which is never the case, then I don't know why people would care. But apparently you're supposed to disclose it. Now, on the podcast itself, I don't, if you were to say, I recommend, and you can go, I mean, I guess if you gave a link and you said, go to blah, blah, blah.com/whatever, I think then you do have to say, that's my affiliate link. But if you were to say, hey, go to the show notes, links to everything, then you would put the disclaimer in the show notes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I like it. Well, so for me, I just because I don't know. It feels wrong not to. That's really where it comes from. It just doesn't feel good inside my heart or my mind that I would not say that. So we do, but I don't know that you're for sure right. I think that you are. It makes sense. But I hadn't ever heard that, but I just do it anyways. I love it. So yeah, take that. If you're listening, make sure that if you're going to monetize with affiliate links, just do it. It feels better in your heart and your mind. And it might actually be a legal issue if you don't. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say also, well, first of all, okay, two parts. One, only recommend stuff and use affiliate links for stuff that you actually either use or recommend. Don't just
and believe in. And
right.
Yeah.
Don't be doing affiliate stuff for just because of the affiliate payout. Maybe it pays 50% and you're going to make hundreds of dollars. But yeah, only refer to stuff that you definitely believe in.
Yeah.
And then kind of the second part is if it's something that you're going to be frequently referring to and recommending, maybe contact that company and work something out where you can get a coupon code from them that's tied to your affiliate link so that you're actually saving the listener money. Hey, go to blah, 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 and use coupon code blah, 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 blah to get 25% off or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then it's actually, first of all, they're more inclined to actually do it because there's kind of more of a motivation, or people are afraid that maybe that coupon code's only good for so long or whatever. So it gives them motivation to go through your link versus someone else's.
100%. Yeah. I like that. Let me wrap up this episode. So many different takeaways. We talked about 3 things. Go back and listen to it if you want to hear them again. We talked about 3 things that you could do if you wanted to be a frugal preneur. And we also talked about 3 big takeaways of starting a new podcast. One of the big ones that I put in caps was implementation. You got to implement it. If you're going to learn it, do it. Because just learning it is never going to make you any money. And we got that info from Sarah today. Just good stuff. She also talked about paying attention to your audience. She talked about ways that she got creatively got Pat Flynn on her podcast. Go back and listen to it if you want to hear that again. We talked about creative way that she got Mike Michalowicz on her podcast. She talked about how CPM versus reaching out directly, how you can make more money and have it more relevant to your audience. She talked about podcast swaps, and I think it was Podbooker or Podmatch. They both do similar things. We'll make sure those links are in the show notes for you. And one of them is going to be affiliate. I just want you to know I'm going to disclose. But I believe in both of those. We use both of those. That's how Sarah and I met, which is important for you to recognize. She's getting exposure on our show, and I'm going to be on her show today. We're going to record the reciprocal interview as well. So that was a really cool thing she said. We didn't really pinpoint it so much while listening, but that podcast swap was a really smart thing that she was sharing with you that you can do to grow your audience. She talked about other ways of growing an audience. She talked about other ways of monetizing a show. And as we talked about affiliates, my two big takeaways. One is it's got to be something that you use and believe in. Like, don't just do it for the payout because it's a big payout or whatever. You've got to keep your integrity intact. It's not all about money. Make it something that you use and or believe in. And then she mentioned something else that was a really cool takeaway right at the end, a coupon code. Reach out to them and ask them if they can create you a special affiliate link that saves your person money. So it's theirwebsite.com/your name or something like that. So it's theirwebsite.com. But if your listener, if your follower clicks on that link and buys it, they pay less than they would normally pay. And so you are making money. The person who they're buying from makes money. But also you're supporting your listener so they don't just randomly pay the same price as they would, but you're getting a little cut of it. They actually get a better deal. So whenever possible, do that. We try that, but it's not every product that'll do it. But I still love this microphone, for example, the one that I'm using right now. I still love it. And so we put it on growyourshow.com/PDF. And yeah, you're going to pay the normal price, but I really think you should buy this. I really like the mic. I think it's worth its weight in gold. And so we put it on there, even if I'm only going to make like 5% or something. It's so low. It's negligible, but we want to put all that in one place. And so Sarah also talked about her 4 books that she wrote. Sarah, will you give me the links to all those? I want to make sure that those are in our show notes because some of them are relevant to our listener today. So go ahead and give us the links to that. And that was just a really cool thing to think, like, we can use these books and just give them away for free, even though we put our heart, mind, and soul into creating them. And we could just give them away for free. And it's in exchange for the contact info. So just warning you, when you download this thing from Sarah today, you might get on her email list, but you might be able to see how she uses her email list and get some ideas as well. So feel free to download any of those books. It seems a couple of them are definitely relevant to you. Maybe all 4 are. Maybe all 4. So we'll put those in the show notes. Sarah, I'm excited to be on your podcast. Let's hang up and I'll see you there. If you're listening, the next episode is a solo episode. Reminder, it's going to be about changing guests, intentional. It's going to be the 3 things that you need to do to make sure that you don't have to keep switching and maneuvering through all of this. You can kind of have it set up in the beginning and never have to worry about it again. So I want you to listen to that. Don't go anywhere. I'll see you on the next episode. By the way, one way to ensure that you don't miss out on great content that we're producing on a regular basis is to make sure you're subscribed to the show. You need to be subscribed or following the Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to it in order not to miss all of that. And before I let you go, I need to mention, because a lot of people are asking, do you help? Can you help me with this? And the answer is yes. My company actually does it. It's called Grow Your Show. And you can find that at growyourshow.com. Our clients, they call us the easy button for podcaster because they simply have to record their episode. And they know that every single thing else is done for them. We sweat the hard stuff so you can be the star of your show. And if you would like help to make sure that we're editing and publishing and promoting and doing your social media, it's all in one place. And I think it's pretty affordable. You'll have to take a look for yourself. Just go to growyourshow.com and check us out. And by the way, I'll see you on the next episode.